Guys, Grand Training Systems, welcome back. Today, we tackle the beast of Achilles tendonitis. So let's start with two major points of one, what is it? And two, why does it come and how do we get rid of it? Well, one, what is it? Well, by textbook definition, it's an overuse friction and tendon traction problem, which probably means nothing to any of us. So speaking our language, first of all, do we even have it? Do you have it? Well, Achilles tendonitis is what we notice when we're walking, jogging, running, basically moving in any fashion, and we feel a burning sensation back in our Achilles. That usually actually ends up going away the more we move and not getting worse. When it gets worse, that's a bit more of an injury, of a strain, a muscle pull. But as it starts to go away, this qualifies as more of a tendonitis. So if that sounds like something you may have, well then we want to know why and where it's coming from. So if this does sound like something you have, let's discuss first actually the points that it may hurt and why it hurts there. So a bit of anatomy here, if you will, or physiology. We know that the muscle goes into a tendon, and then the tendon connects to a bone. But what we don't speak about very much is that the muscle tissue we know has a very good blood flow and is very elastic. But the tendon has actually very poor blood flow and is not very elastic. And then the bone is the most sensitive tissue in the body. So a great example for this is with a shirt. If it were to be torn by someone pulling you, where does the shirt usually tear? It tears on the seam. And why is this? Because the seam usually is one of the weaker parts of the shirt. That's where the two pieces of fabric are being sewn together. So when the shirt is pulling, it makes sense for it to be torn there. The same thing is with the muscle. When the muscle same thing is with the tendonitis. When the muscle goes into the tendon, we're having a tissue tensile change, if you will, and then when the tendon connects to the bone, we have the exact same thing. So with these overuse injuries and the Achilles tendonitis, that's why it makes sense that you, if you have this, may feel this directly on the bone, or a little bit up where that heel cord starts going into that muscle belly. So now that we have a bit of an understanding of what it is and exactly where the pain would be, why does it come? Well, again, textbook definition would say improper mechanics and poor foot mechanics. But again, that's a very vague answer. So we're going to go over, I think, 3 points here if I remember correctly. One is I like to start with the tightness of the Achilles. The tightness of the Achilles, we know due to the insertion point on the ankle, if you will, it begins to pull our feet outwards, like a duck as we say, when it becomes tight. So not only are we usually standing in this duck-like position, but this is also how we're walking, and many times when we're runners, this is how we run. So just go out on the street, watch the people walk around, look for the guys in the shoes with the big heel-to-toe ratio like the Air Maxes or whatever, and notice how many of them are walking in this duck-like position. So right away, that is a fantastic example of what improper mechanics would mean. The second one I like to go over is the running mechanics. So I mentioned before, the people that walk like a duck usually run like a duck, and if we're heel striking, then for sure they do. So I think there's enough research out there in books and YouTube videos and whatever to suggest that we should be striking on the front of our foot. There's one of the greatest anthropologists of the world says he believes we heel strike when we walk because we don't need the mechanical energy that we get from the Achilles and the plantar fascia when we strike on the front forefoot of our foot when we run. So if there's not enough evidence out there to convince you that we should be front running, then keep searching because your mind will change. So with the heel strike that we believe is wrong, that really causes an overpronation, with the duck stance combined with the heel strike, we are really looking at some very, very, very large mechanical efficiencies that are going to lead to this injury. And the last one is improper mechanics overall. I had a very, very, very high level runner that had Achilles tendonitis for about 15 months and it wasn't going away because everybody was always looking only at her Achilles. But the minute we noticed that her squat was far from correct, and along with a lot of her other movements because of other tightnesses in her body and just poor movement mechanics, we realized that once we cleaned all of that up, it took the tension and the stress off of her Achilles, and with the rehab of both of them together, so the movement rehab and then the Achilles rehab, everything within 2 months went away and she was running again. So for 15 months being injured, 2 months later being basically hopefully fixed, that's a pretty big diagnosis, if you will. So the 3 is your running mechanics, your duck stance if you are, and then your overall movement capabilities. And lastly, just to briefly touch on the running. Running is an activity that has to be taught. We were taught how to walk when we were young, you're taught how to ride a horse, you're taught how basically to do everything, at least with some instruction. Running has to be the same. So if you're now a businessman, a businesswoman, and you're trying to get fit, and you want to go out there and run, that's fantastic, but remember, it's an activity that needs to be learned. Find a professional, preferably that teaches front foot running, and have them help you learn how to do it so you can save yourself from many of these injuries and start it correctly. And then the poor foot mechanics, well, I think we've basically already gone over that. From the heel strike and the overpronation, from the front foot strike and the strengthening of those muscles, and the striking with a front foot and not a duck foot, I think that will clarify what we mean by poor foot mechanics. So the second video, which I was fortunate enough to have the judo team help me out with, we will go into a pretty cool test to see exactly where the length-tension relationship of our Achilles is, and them being quite high-level athletes, you might be surprised with what you see, but no matter what we do have or where we do begin, everything is possible to fix. So remember that and don't lose hope. So guys, on to the next video. I appreciate you watching this. If you have any questions, please feel free to write, and yeah, see you in a few seconds.